Good morning everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. So here today for A-level biology part 2 we are going to be looking at cell theory. So cell theory is simply defined as the fundamental principles that define the nature, structure and function of cells. So remember, these are fundamental principles. So we cannot talk about cell theory without looking at the people who mostly contributed to cell theory. So these names are Robert Hooke, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and Matthias Schleiden. So these names are extremely important for the sake of your exams. So now, when we can now look at what cell theory is. So we have already defined cell theory to be fundamental principles that define nature, structure, and functions of cells. So what are some of the things that the cell theory talks about? Firstly, cell theory talks about all living organisms are composed of cells. In other words, the all living organisms such as humans, they are made up of cells such as the red blood cells, white blood cells, among others. We'll also have if you see a plant will have plant cells. We also have the bacterial cell that makes up other organisms. So now we also have whatever living organisms such as fungi, also they contain cells. So that's the first principle, which talks about all living organisms are composed of cells. So to just add on all living organisms are composed of cells, when you look at the human body or the human in general, it is made up of cells such as the nerve cells, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the bone cells, the ovum for the females, the sperm cells for the male, and the intestinal cells. The other thing that cell theory talks about is that all cells come from pre-existing cells. This means that for cells, for example, if you see these two cells, they simply became cells from this cell, meaning to say this cell divided into two to produce these cells. This is what we mean to say all cells come from pre-existing cells. So through the division of this cell, we have these other cells. So let's look at our last theorem, or rather what it talks about. So the third theorem talks about cells are the basic units of life. When we talk about them being the basic units of life, we are just going to be looking at their structure and their function. Like for example, if we go back to this, you will find that the nerve cells are adapted in terms of the structure. So the nerve cells carry electrical impulses through them. This is why they have the axons and the dendrites. So due to their structure, you can even be able to tell that this is their function. The red blood cell, which is biconcave shaped disc, has got its own function, and the function is related to its structure. The biconcave disc helps it to more like accommodate as much oxygen as possible. We also talk about the sperm, the function of the sperm, and also its ability to be able to swim. This is why it has got a tail. So each and everything, the nature and the structure and function corresponds to how a cell is. So that is basically what cell theory is all about. So to summarize, when we look at cell theory, cell theory simply talks about cells come from the replication of pre-existing cells. Cells also make up all biological organisms, and finally cells are the basic building blocks of life itself. So thank you very much for watching my video. Hope you would like, subscribe and share for more.